steering pump is done the same way. And as the belt wears, it will lengthen and it's possible that the tension needs to be adjusted. We saw an automatic tensioner on the timing belt system. It's an idler pulley that uses a spring to apply a constant tension on the belt. This is the same system that's used in a serpentine belt system. On the front of the engine will be a spring-loaded tensioner that keeps the belt at the correct tension. And with a serpentine belt system, the functioning of this automatic tensioner is just as important as the belt itself. And generally, the tensioner should be replaced at the same time as the belt, and they'll probably come as a kit. So, the serpentine belt has a few advantages, which is why it's become the standard on modern engines. There's only a single belt and a single tensioner to deal with. And you can see that on this engine, if the alternator belt needs to be replaced, then we have to pull off the power steering belt to get to it. The engine can also be made more compact, with the accessories pulled in much tighter to the block, and those accessories can be mounted more simply because they don't need to swivel and apply tension to the belt. But the one disadvantage is that if the serpentine belt fails, then all the accessory systems are lost at the same time. The alternator, coolant pump, power steering, all gone. Let's get in for a closer look at the belt. Now, unusually for the automotive industry, these multi-rib belts are very standard across the whole industry, and they pretty much all use the same spacing or pitch of the ribs. There's actually an industry standard code printed on all these belts. There's also a manufacturer's code, but the number we're interested in is what's called the PK number. Why is it called the PK number? Well, it has the letters PK in it. Now, the first number in there represents the number of ribs on our belt. So in our case, we have 4 ribs. There's 4 ribs on here. 6 is also common. This belt has 5. So that tells you the number of ribs. The last number is the effective length of this belt in millimeters. And the PK, that means that this is a standard automotive belt. If you're working on a ship or a hovercraft, then you're going to see different letters there, but PK is standard for automotive belts. The profile of the belt is designed so that there's a bit of clearance between the bottoms of the ribs and the pulley, and this allows for a channel along which water can escape when the belt is wet or the pulley is wet, and it stops the belt from hydroplaning and slipping on a film of water. Now, the belt is made up of some sort of tough backing and the ribbed section, which is made of a flexible, high friction material, kind of like rubber, although more modern materials will be neoprene or EPDM. Belts used to wear by cracking along the ribs, but newer EPDM belts tend not to crack. Just like tyres wear down on the road and they lose a bit of rubber, the belt wears down running over the pulleys. And this wear will reduce the clearance between the belt and the bottom of the grooves in the pulley, and it stops the belt from wedging so firmly into the grooves. Now, with a belt that cracks, the general rule was, and still is, that a belt should be replaced if there's more than 3 cracks in a 3-inch section. Now, with a belt that doesn't crack, like this EPDM stuff, you can't see at a glance how worn the belt is. So there are tools available, basically little gauges, that fit into these rubs. They fit into these ribs and show if a belt is worn, but you're better off and you're fine to go off the mileage. These belts should be inspected every 60,000 miles and replaced about every 90,000. And when you're inspecting the belt, you've got to take the belt off and check any tensioners or any idlers for play. Because this is an important thing. The serpentine system it's a whole system and not just a belt. Now, a worn belt is going to slip, and you might hear a belt squeal as the first symptom. Belt slippage is bad, okay? Reduced power transmission, that squealing noise, and as soon as the belt starts slipping, is going to get damaged much faster. And as the belt slips on the pulleys, particularly on the alternator, it generates heat from the friction of slipping, and that friction, that heat, can damage the bearings inside the accessories. And as we talked about with alternators, if the belt is slipping, then eventually you'll see the battery light come on to show you that the alternator isn't producing enough charge. If you've got problems with anything that's driven by the belt, power steering, aircon, alternator, water pump, your first check should be the belt system. One other thing to watch for is the alignment of the pulleys. Now, all the pulleys for a belt should be in a perfect line so that the belt runs neatly across the grooves without drifting from side to side. Now with the engine running, you should be able to look down sideways at a belt and see that it's not wobbling or wavering on a pulley from side to side. So there we have it, drive belts. In